Listen and subscribe to The Table of Truth on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts.
Speaking on hip hop, based on what D'Angelo said, that it's not black culture anymore, should black folks start gatekeeping hip hop or keep it to where it's open, or anybody can take the art form and interpret it however they want to interpret it with respect to the culture?
I would say no, because it hasn't always been a purely black invention. Because there, even in the early days of it, even from 77 to 80, it was heavily Latino, Asian people had a lot of people into it. So I think the one misconception I would say for hip hop in general and black people, because this is one of the things I used to come up against when I was working at BET, is I would be with these, in these meetings with the execs about like the hip hop awards, quote unquote. And I'm over here like, yo, hip hop is a global thing now. It's not like black people in America identify hip hop mostly with rap. And then there's more, but your average Negro will think, when they think of hip hop, they usually think of rap. And so a lot of times a lot of people aren't as exposed to like the contributions of other cultures into rap. And yes, black people are the main part of it that kind of drove it. But like, especially in the early days, Latinos are just as much heavy into it in terms of the contributions in that. So it's really weird to kind of say that it's only a black thing. However, with that being said, like you said, now that it's been in the mainstream, it is the mainstream for the last, especially 15 to 20 years, you're starting to see kind of, everyone picking up and running with it, if you want to put it that way, right? Like you go to Asia and there's a whole freaking industry of rap, specifically Asia, and that's like Thailand, Singapore, Vietnam, that has nothing to do with black culture, but it's heavily influenced by black culture. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to kind of say like, how would, and I guess the larger question is, how would black people, quote unquote, gatekeep hip hop in general? Because like when I say hip hop, I'm talking about everything. Like rap music is specifically, we dominate in terms of that subgenre, but it's such a global thing. And it's interesting because I see more pure essence of hip hop in other cultures in terms of how they appreciate it. And then those cultures, they all give back to black culture. None of them are like, oh, this is ours. This is like, yo, this is something that black people created that's amazing, that we appreciate and build upon, as opposed to, like you said, the culture vultures, which there are there. And I think that the culture vulture part comes more in rap, I believe, or I see it more anyways. So I don't know. I don't know how you would actually keep something that has now been embraced on a global scale and is done and took it in different ways. Because rap in like the Middle East is a social activist type of thing. And then rap in like, say, South Africa or different parts of Africa has its own little thing. So I don't know. Like, I don't know how we would actually how would we gatekeep it at this point?
You made a comment about, like, I don't know if you said black people didn't invent it. We did invent hip hop. There was a dialogue a couple of years ago about, in b-boy cultures specifically, that the Puerto Ricans invent breaking, or in hip hop, that aspect of hip hop. No, but they were really right after. Black people.
Yeah. Oh, I would say, I wouldn't even say after. I would say in conjunction, because I think that's the one part. Like one of the biggest things I learned in New York was the large contribution that the Puerto Ricans did have to the birth of hip hop in all its forms. Right?
Black people started it. Puerto Ricans and everybody else carried the torch. The same with jazz music.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, because like I said, I won't say it definitively, more just because,
Wiggles,
it was all in tandem, if you want to put it that, like very specific thing, like say for Cool Herc and DJing in that aspect.
The only reason I say this is because Wiggles actually came out and said what.
Yeah. And even then I laughed because
we were there. We helped define the genre and kept the torch moving. So what I'm saying is, not just black people, I'm just saying people who, if we're going to gatekeep percent of the culture, people will have the say so with people that are like preserving the culture, I guess. But on the flip side, hip hop is for everybody. I appreciate when I can when we went to Japan, right? Personal experience. I saw a cipher. The universal language was hip hop. We were rapping. I didn't understand what they were saying. They probably didn't understand what I was saying, but we came together and bonded. I wasn't trying to correct them. Like, you ain't spitting these bars right. Nah, we just came together because we just have an affinity for the culture. And we were spitting in the cipher.
Yeah.
And that's the dope aspect of it. But there's also points where, like, you know, you got a Post Malone saying hip hop is dead. I was like, who are you? Tell us that hip good.
Yeah. And that's the silly part, right? Like, that's like, yeah. And like a good example, someone was saying was, actually, shout out to Richter for saying that. She was like, you know, of the newer, more popular rappers that we don't necessarily listen to, there's a good chunk of them that know their shit and know their shit from their history, give back to the, you know. And so he, like, where I was talking about Russ, and like, I cannot name one Russ song ever, but this dude is mad popular. He got the streams, he's making money, and he has 2 EPs out this month, one with Ninth Wonder and one with Alchemist. And then I was listening to an interview with him, and he was like, yeah, man, these are fucking dope ass hip hop producers that's been doing it forever. And like, the respect and all that stuff that he was giving was really dope. And so someone like a Logic is in that same part. Mac Miller, you know, rest in peace. He was in that same where, like, they're the younger rappers that, you know, either white, Latino, or white passing, that still know their history and are not, like you said, culture vulture. They're actually contributing to the culture, making sure they're paying homage to their history and then keeping it moving like that. And I think that's the part where I think is the most important for the younger kids, because, you know, for all that I said about Mac Miller, Logic, you know, Logic's half white, half black, and Russ, you got a lot of the drill rappers or the younger kids that are, you know, the black kids are from the hoods that are, you know, drill is basically their gangster rap. And like, they have no ties to anything like historical. Like, they just don't care as much anymore. Don't have that connection of the legacy of, like, they're rapping. A lot of the kids that rap now, especially the TikTok kids and all them, they're kind of doing it almost like a fun hobby type thing. But then they only a few subset of them actually get inside the actual culture of shit. A lot of it just kind of do it almost some fly by night type shit, which is interesting to see it. But it's also kind of when some of those young kids do know their shit, it's fucking dope because they're actually putting the time in. Like, yo, I used to listen to XYZ. Or another good example is, who is it? Oh, Doja Cat. And they're like, who's your favorite rapper? And she said Fonte from Little Brother. And then the comments were like, who? And then she's like, no, I've been listening to Little Brother since they started out when I was younger. And she rapped one of his full verses. And then, but I was laughing because, again, a lot of young rappers that sometimes they don't even like reference anyone from the old and almost like discount that dumb shit. Like, kind of like when 21 Savage was saying something fronting about Nas or something stupid like that.
You got the new generation, and you ask them who their GOAT is, they'll probably say maybe Kobe Bryant, but most people will say LeBron James or whoever. Where we're from an era where we're like, hey, man, there was a guy in Chicago.
Yeah, and they literally don't have any concept of what we experience with Jordan and how we define greatest of all time. That's why
it's an era
that whole thing
players. And it's the same thing with like, you know,
it's
I don't know if I don't know if it's doing a discredit. Like, if you're, especially in hip hop, you're like who's your favorite rapper, who's your GOAT, and they'll say blah blah blah, and they don't mention like KRS. And a part of me is like, that's no disrespect, because one, those dudes are probably not as relevant, and two, they only know what they know and where they got their source information. Because for me, when the music get annoying to me, is because it's passed me by. It was the same thing when my music came out, and I annoyed the older heads, and I was like, well, culture passed you by. So I have to keep more of an open mind when the new music comes out and let these dudes cook and just you know, so.
Yeah. It's not that it's subjective, but it's more that it's just, again, your time of music, the popular music that's catered to you in pop culture is no longer catered to you. It's catered to people who are 10, 20 years younger than you.
Yep, exactly.
So you just kind of got to move out of that. I think the one thing that connects Black people to hip hop idiosyncratically separates us in that narrative versus all others is the fact that for a while in this country, specifically, hip hop was marginalized. You know, you couldn't get people to play it on the radio. You couldn't get it. And for all of those who at that time, the only faces that were mostly involved trying to do that were black people.
Yeah.
And so that narrative is baked into hip hop because that is where it began in this country. You know,
Yeah.
it began
And-
with that story. So I think, I agree with you guys. I don't know if there's a gatekeeping at this point because again, we've, like all things with time, we've grown from that era to a different place now as a community, as individuals. So, you know, we adapt with the time. So, you know, but you can't separate, but I don't think there's a separation of that. And that's why it always still comes back to some, not all, within the various different, because we're not all the same, but the various communities that make up the Black community at large, still feel that ownership of hip hop because of the things that had to be sacrificed in order to get it to where it is now. There was a whole struggle, and
that's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, it's the struggle part. I think that's the one thing. Like even so, for instance, just in the dance part, the street dance in general, you know, a lot of it was born out of Black struggle, along with everyone else on the top of that. And so it is interesting to see now the kids of all races learning street dance without the context of the struggle. And so they dance differently because they didn't, you know, like we say, we were talking about, I was in Brooklyn at one of the day parties, and, you know, it was just a park, DJ, people were dancing, having fun. And it was interesting because a lot of the old heads came out and they're like in their 60s, you know, they used to party back in the 80s and all that. So when they have outdoor parties, they come out and dance and stuff, and they dance completely different than the younger people because, you know, they were dancing at that time, you know, they had their full-time job working at, you know, being a bus driver or whatever, you know, a service worker job. And then they would go dance for release to kind of, you know, get away from the troubles or stay out of trouble or those types of things. And so when they tell stories, they're just like, yeah, dance helped me get me out of trouble. It helped me keep my mind right or whatever. And so like their dance comes from that, as opposed to a lot of the younger kids now. They're like, oh, I want to dance because it looks cool, or I just got into it, or, you know, that. And so there's a different motivation for that. And so coming to New York, I actually got to see a lot more of the street dance culture from the older heads that are like, you know, 50 and over, and they've been dancing since the 80s. And it's interesting to hear their stories, dance with them, because it makes me dance differently because they're coming from a different way, you know? And so, yeah, I think you're right. There's no real like gatekeeping, but I almost think it's more about the preservation of the history part. That I think that I'm starting to see now is like as a lot of these elders in rap and in dance are starting to get up here in age, it's almost like there's no one to preserve that history in terms of just like, you know, whether it's, you know, interviewing them or, you know, bringing, you know, podcasting or whatever it is to hear those stories, because once they pass, and it's pretty much gone, you know, and now, and it will continually dilute and get to that public, like D'Angelo was saying, it's like, it's in mainstream now, it's popular. So it's farther away from the original origins of struggle.
You're mute.
Yeah, I'm mute.
You good?
Am I back on? Okay. Well, I think that's the big issue, is that now everything is diluted in the mainstream pop culture, and it is an acceptable form, or it arrived. Yeah. And so now what it originally was defined as a kind of vehicle for social issues, social justice, and then, but even during the 90s, it had redefined itself, right?
True.
You know, like Big E, Jay-Z, everybody that emerged in the 90s weren't talking about, you know, power to Black people or anything like that. They were more talking about themselves and, you know, and things like that. But I think there was always a uniqueness in storytelling for a while. And then, you know, this era of music has passed me up. I accepted that. But when I do listen, I'm not, and this is without judgment, it just all sounds the same. And I think that's because of, again, that place that we're in where it's in the mainstream, and also it's a part of that content rush of artists just, you know, churning out songs to beats without any kind of...
It's quantity over quality for a lot of people. Not everyone, but there is a lot where like the frequency that these songs come out now. And it's interesting too, because, you know, things are more catered around the single as opposed to the full album. Certain artists still, you know, but you'll see a lot of the younger rappers, they'll kind of drop single by single by single over a certain amount of time before they even get to a full album. And sometimes that full album will literally just be because once, you know, you go viral on, you know, TikTok or Instagram, you know, a lot of them weren't even like, they were going viral, which is dope, but then they're like, I didn't have an album to like also promote after. They were just throwing 1 or 2 songs up on, you know, whatever social platforms, and then they hit. So it is interesting, like you said, like I still DJ. I still DJ mostly older music just because I can play whatever I want, which is awesome. But I remember I was DJing Thursday and someone asked me for Ice Spice, and I was like, nah. And they're like, you're not gonna play it? I'm like, nah, I think she's terrible. I don't like playing music I don't like.
Yeah, hold on. Let me pause you real quick, because DJs used to be the gateway to hear new music. So are you doing a disservice as a DJ not dropping new stuff? Like when we listen to the radio, you always want to hear what was hot and what was new. Yeah.
Yep.
Consistent.
Yep.
Like
totally
what's
agree.
going on, what's the new, what's the flavor of the month. So when I used to go out clubs, I would hear the new shit. I'm like, oh, what is this? And I would go look for it. So are you not dropping the new stuff, or are you just consistent and stable?
No, I think it's what it is now. It's twofold. I think the listener is the audience member is a little bit different now. So you have an age, depending on where you're spinning and what the age range is. I would say from the mid 20s to early 30s, there's almost an expectation that the DJ is like your Spotify. So like that's where you'll see heavier on the requests, or like, can you play Bad Bunny? Can you play XYZ? I found that people that were 35 and older go for what Cam just described. I'm kind of going to just, part of it is nostalgia, part of it is to hear something new. Because like I do play new stuff actually, but it's very curated of stuff that I like, whether it's a remix or it's something else that I'm throwing in. But then like, am I playing like drill music when I'm DJing? Probably not, because drill's not really a public or a bar club situation. It's more, a lot of it doesn't really fit in that genre. Now, Ice Spice actually does. She actually makes drill music that's more for the club and that aspect. And I think Glorilla, I forgot the other chick's name, Lotto, sorta. And so, but at the same time, getting back into DJing, I was like, I don't want to play shit that I don't like. Let me just stand on that hill. And if I don't like it, that's just what it is. But then again, I'll play a lot of random stuff and remixes and stuff that people's never heard. And they come up, they're like, yo, what is this? And then that's the part where I give back in terms of like exposing maybe like someone they've never heard before that's a good producer or a DJ and a remix that they've made or something like that. And in my mind, that's how I look at it, as opposed to like I definitely am not playing like a Ice Spice just because I personally don't think she's a good rapper, but I know it's a hot song. So I'm not saying it's not hot. It's just that me as a DJ, I don't want to play it because it's not my thing. But I make sure that I might not be in those spaces that would want that type of thing. And, you know, it still comes up every once in a while. Like Bad Bunny is actually a great example. Like I'm not the biggest Bad Bunny fan, but he has like 4 or 5 albums worth of work, which is crazy. And there's some dope shit in there. And to that point, you know, Bad Bunny's probably one of the most requested artists for any DJ. And when people come up to me and ask me, they're like, yo, can you play Bad Bunny? I'm like, cool, which song? And they're like, the Spanish one? And I'm like, you mean all of them? And I'm like, and because people that they don't even know the songs at this point sometimes. So yeah, it's a really interesting situation these days in terms of music listening and audience members, stuff like that.
Well, that's the tech as well. I mean, that's the difference. Right? And then at the birth of hip hop, social media didn't exist. The internet wasn't where it would be by the end of this 20th century, going into the 21st. So now we got it. Like you said, you can choose to do that because there's so much, and it's all at the fingertips of everybody. Yeah. So now they're not. That changed the culture of expecting to hear new things from DJs. Because by the time the DJ is spinning it, you've already heard it, because you know you spend 15 hours of the day on social media,
TikTok, and it was funny because when I got back into DJing last year, after being away for 4 or 5 years. I was talking to my DJ friends. I was like, yo, do I need to pay attention to what's like popular on TikTok? And my friend was like, nah, 3/4 of it is old shit that just got a revival on TikTok. And he's like, and then 1/4 is like, more the newer rappers. And out of that, like maybe the first 30 seconds is cool, but it's not a full song, or it's not a good, like, well-constructed actual song. And it was funny because I did that. I went back, I downloaded, I was just curious. I wanted to see what the 100 top TikTok songs are. And sure enough, 3/4 of them was shit from the last 20 years that just kind of like, came back, which is kind of awesome, actually. And that was the other interesting thing I started to see is younger people now are exposed to older music because of TikTok. And then it's either their parents or they hear it on TikTok. So they'll know, a 19, 20-year-old will know Earth, Wind, and Fire September because someone did a routine to it on TikTok and it went viral, blah, 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 blah. And they'll know it. And I'm like, hey, you know what? Honestly, that's kind of dope.
Yeah. And I think TV and film is kind of pushing that as well, because if you look at Guardians of the Galaxy, boy, that there's the mixtape and the whole soundtrack is music. I even picked up on some songs that I had heard when I was younger, but never knew the name of them or the band or the artist or whatever. And it's so I think it is. You're right. Like in TikTok, I'm assuming that's like times 20
totally
in that regard.
It cracks me up the types of songs that just happen to like go viral again because of TikTok and whatever dance or whatever. And like there's she's a Gen Xer. She's probably like a year older than me. She's like 44, white lady from St. Louis or something. And like she's funny. She's super. She was definitely that white girl in the 90s. She listened to MC Hammer. She listened to NWA, Tribe, all that kind of stuff. But she used to be a dancer and she was a cheerleader and she dances like a cheerleader. And so she went viral off of I think it was Vanilla. It was MC Hammer. And it was Can't Touch This. And a bunch of millennial, or it's not even millennials, Gen Z did like a shitty routine to MC Hammer's Can't Touch This. And you can see her. And so her viral video was like pissed because she was like, look, first of all, you shouldn't do anything with MC. You know what? And then so she did this whole thing. She got the Hammer pants on. And then she literally broke down like Hammer's routine from that. And it's all funny. It's all really well in natured. And then on top of that, she actually does it well. And so her whole like shtick is that like I'm a Generation X mom experiencing what's going on, and some of you people are fucking horrible at it. And so like one viral video that she did too was like it was like a I don't know millennials talking about how come we don't talk about Generation X people like that. And then she comes in, she stitches in, she's like, look, we had fucking layaway, latchkey, we were left by ourselves, so we had to do all.
That's that lady when she said at the end we will fuck you up.
Yeah, exactly that one. And it was like he's like we grew up in a different era. We're like we would go outside for like 8 hours and we would not talk to our parents.
Man,
like
and then millennials got traumatized by September 11th and everything else that happened.
So she was like, "Yeah, we don't give a fuck. Like you're already over here having fake anxiety. I was by myself for like 12 hours a day. I didn't know
what my therapist was. Genesis, which is right. It's funny and wrong at the same time. But I mean, it is what it is.
Like, yeah, but I think you're right. The generational thing, and it's also too, embracing that aspect of it, and then exposing people to different things, right? Like, someone might expose, like, again, as a DJ, I can, bring back something that I liked, and then that is dope, and then someone kind of like, oh man, I remember I saw another post where someone was like, yo, it would have been crazy to grow up in this era of R&B, and it was like Carl Thomas, Music Soul Child, Wale,
hey,
Craig David,
look to their credit, that was good music. But there was 100%. Better.
But the way they talked about it, but the way they talked about it was like us talking about, man, it would have been dope to been around during James Brown and freaking like, and that's what made me like pause. And I was like, I play half this stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's funny, it is a funny thing when you think about it. And that's how I think, going back to the original question that you have to look at is that what's the era, what's the generation, and what is the generation, what's the zeitgeist, right? Like what's the spirit at the time?
Yeah. And I think it's less about gatekeeping more as exposing, teaching, and sharing. And I think that's one of the things I've been getting better about too, is it's like, instead of being hypercritical, kind of like what Cam was saying about not being judgmental, but like now, like for me, I'll just ask questions to kind of gauge where they're like. I went to the they did a hip hop photography exhibit recently that just closed, I think today actually, but it was open for a while, and it was 50 years of basically rap photography. So they started in 1977, they went all the way up, and then they broke it down from like the 80s, and they had a separate section for the Bay, for West Coast, and then also had the Bay section, then the East Coast situation, and it was all the photos that we've seen on magazine covers, album covers, photo like articles and stuff like that, and it was really, really, really dope. And I went with a bunch of kids that were like younger than me, and it was interesting to hear which pictures resonated with them, or like what they thought about it. Cause I was like trying to figure out what era they were in. Cause I knew they were younger than me, but I just didn't know which one. And then when I started to see it, then it was like, oh, okay. And then I said, I was punch in with things that I knew. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is when Biggie and Tupac were rapping in New York and da-da-da-da-da. And like, they had the source is big. So we used to always look at the source. That's where we saw a lot of these photos. Like, for us, the liner notes is where you would see most of these photos, or the covers. And then you would see it in magazines, double XL, source.
Magazine.
Yeah, like that. I was like, that's why I've seen most of this photography, not all of it, but a lot of it was like, and it was dope to see a lot of the candid. There was a dope candid of Mos and Talib Kweli circa Black Star album, between Black Star and Lyricist Lounge. And it was just in them in a diner. And so it was like little pieces like that and then that's what they were saying. They're like, yeah, it would have been dope to grow up in that era, to be, when Lyricist Lounge came out and we're on the West Coast, we're like, yo, what the hell? This is dope. Lyricist Lounge album, that I learned about so many different East Coast rappers that I had never heard of before at that time. And so, but yeah, it was interesting to hear their kind of take, and now being less judgmental and more just asking questions and kind of like answering stuff too. If they are like, oh, what about this person or that, or like certain eras that happened during that time period.
Yeah, I mean, just think about how different everything is. There was a long era where music video programming was like a big deal. Like it was like, and creating music. I was talking to someone about remembering how there was that strong marriage between Hollywood and the music industry, where the big budget films would always have at least 2 or 3 singles from an album that would get a full video complete with the actors from the movie and the artist, whoever was saying, like it would be a full-fledged production, like and it would release at the same time as the movie. And that whole era, like then that was a thing for a while, and then it just stopped.
Yeah, and now that was telling them, I was like, I remember this when I was at Marvel and Black Panther came out. And then the Black Panther soundtrack came out, and one of the guys I was working with, he was like, yo, this is dope, dude. Like, movie comes out, and then you have a soundtrack that's like all like new music from different artists, da-da-da-da-da. And so I was explaining to him, I was like, yeah, in the 90s, 2000 era, every quote-unquote hood or black movie had a soundtrack that sometimes was better than the movie. And then the record labels would throw new artists on there to like break them first on that soundtrack, and then they would come off and da-da-da-da-da. And so I was like, yo, like High School High soundtrack, the Have Plenty soundtrack.
Remember some music videos would be literally the rapper or the artist rapping against the backdrop of scenes from the movie. I remember, was that Gangsta's Paradise from Dangerous Mind?
I think Michelle Pfeiffer was in that thing too.
She was. She was in the video. Michelle Pfeiffer in the Gangsta Paradise video. Leather jacket from the movie and
That's
all.
hilarious.
Yeah. And then Prince with Batman. I think that was one of the early kind of like where
mainstream
that like
thing,
really
crossover.
Yeah, where that because Prince was all over, like every part of that movie, every song you heard in that movie was Prince.
Yeah. He did
the
score, or he like collaborated on the score?
He did the soundtrack. Danny Elfman did the score. So like all the original songs were Prince, but the suites were Danny Elfman. So that the opening score, the Batman suite, all that stuff was Danny Elfman.
Crazy. Yeah. No, you're right though. Like music was such a heavy, like, you're right. Every blockbuster has one song, like, what was it? Armageddon and Aerosmith and
Yeah. I know. Remember
Celine Dion and
the,
Titanic?
That was probably one of the most popular ones, Celine Dion and Titanic. And then you had even the bad movies. Remember Gotham City?
And R. Kelly?
R. Kelly. No, R. Kelly did a couple because he did.
I believe Like a Fly was on Space
I believe
Jam.
was it Street Fighter?
Yep.
He went all around the planet pitching, and no one hit it. I'm the first batter of them all. Sophia, so come and get it or whatever. I used to love that soundtrack. Yeah,
Golden State Warriors, dude. The Street Fighter soundtrack. That's probably one of my favorite rap-centric soundtrack. And then it had the random Deion Sanders MC Hammer song. Must be the
Street Fighter. As much as it was a bad movie, was like it was a dope soundtrack. For me, the best hip hop soundtrack to a film or documentary was Soul and Whole. That was like the best for me.
Oh yeah, that's you're right. Yeah, that was a dope one.
New Jersey Drive
New Jersey Drive is also another one. That was
movie. The movie wasn't great, but I want to rewatch it again.
But the soundtrack was good.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah,
You're right.
Well, that was I like New Jersey Drive. I throw it in there with that. It was a big part of my actual grad research, but it's in that era of like the gangster film and the Black Hood film or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of those at that time. Yeah, that's true.
I was gonna
say Seal, Kiss from a Rose. It was the first Batman.
Yeah, that was Batman Forever. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Man.
And then wait, Seal did Fly Like an Eagle. That was
Fly Like Eagle, the Steve Miller
Space.
cover?
See, that was
like
Space
an
Jam.
eagle. That
No. Yeah, the Steve Miller. Yeah, that one.
Yep.
Yeah, he did that cover for Space Jam.
Yep. That's right.
I just
Space Jam had
remember
a
the
couple
Monstars
joints.
from Space Jams with
They
Real and Method Man.
Oh
Get 'em high.
Yeah. I hit him high.
So I was looking this up, and then you can't really find movie soundtracks on streaming services. Like there's a few, but as the whole, as the compilation, you have to kind of like piece. I've seen people piece it together, but I haven't seen
and put playlists together.
I've seen people like, hey, this was the High School High playlist, and they'll pick the songs and piece it. But I didn't see like re-releases of it, so it's almost like you got to go find those physical CDs to like. That would be actually a good like almost like a nostalgia thing of just getting physical CDs of soundtracks.
I would, that would be fun. You remember, because I recently looked for, remember Diddy had that song on the Come With Me from the 98 Godzilla movie with Matthew Broderick.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And man,
what
there was so many.
What was Wu Wear
High School
on?
High. You can find High School High actually on streaming services.
Yeah, but yeah, it is interesting to see like those types of things where I'm like, pretty much, it was just a fun thing. Like, the sound, you were more excited for the soundtrack than you were for, like, I remember Above the Rim was a straight West Coast.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, High School High. Yeah, the Above the Rim was a straight West Coast like soundtrack, and it was just like basically all
it was like a West Coast soundtrack, but it was like an East Coast hoop movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's so weird about it.
Yeah, that was weird about it. Yeah, man, there was so many during that time. Did you see? Remember what was that movie? Sarah Jessica Parker was in it with not Sarah Jessica Parker, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
The Craft.
I know what you did last summer.
No, I'm thinking of something else.
No.
Oh yeah.
Cruel Intentions.
Oh, that was a good soundtrack.
And that one had that one song that ended up being like real popular. It was a Bittersweet Symphony or whatever. That one that they played. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like that was an era, man. Like where you had the movie and then the music that went with it, and both of them stood on their own. Because you remember. Whenever I hear that song, I instantly think of that movie. Instantly think of that movie.
Yeah, The Verb. Yeah,
The Verb.
I mean, it's the same with Gangsta's Paradise and Dangerous Minds.
Yeah,
like
and
I remember when I watched Dangerous Minds, they literally used that song like 6 times in the movie.
Oh, dude, it was all over the movie. But that's how it was, though. They would do often at least one time. one of the songs would be in the film.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm looking at the Dangerous Mind soundtrack, and it's heavily got like it's like Jodeci.
It's like
all
West
over
Coast,
it.
right?
It's like Devontae got a song.
Oh,
it
nice.
was a weird, like there were like
a
3
weird
songs by
soundtrack.
Jodeci, Aaron Hall, Coolio, Immature.
Ooh, Aaron Hall.
Rappin' Forte got one. Wendy and Lisa's got a track. Big Mike and Sister got.
Yeah, it was that was a weird soundtrack.
Yeah, I think Nutty Professor was another one of my favorites because that was the first one you heard Aaliyah with Timbaland and crew. So it was like the basement or whatever. It was like Missy, Genuine, Playa was on the background vocals. But yeah, Nutty Professor, that's another one that was like a good like thing.
All of Eddie Murphy's movies had like crazy soundtrack. Remember Dr. Doolittle?
Boomerang too. Well, that's not Eddie, but still.
It was in the line of that Boomerang, but it had a good soundtrack.
Best Man too as well. See, now you know what? I might actually do this. I might have to start doing a nostalgia CD run of just like
Babyface.
Just like put him in.
Then the second track, the artist is unknown. I got to listen to it. Keith Washington, PM Dawned, I Died Without You. Grace Jones, Boys to Men.
Oh, that was a great scene
Faith
too.
Cartel, Tony Braxton, Johnny Gill, Shanice, another unknown, and a Tribe Called Quest with Hot Sex on the Planet. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, can you imagine? It would be a big deal for a movie today to bring that many disparate artists together that are all like doing their thing separately at the same time. Like every artist you just named were
I think Black Panther had an opportunity, but it was terrible.
And well, it was all Kendrick Lamar, right?
It was the closest. Honestly, that's the closest that you're going to get in the modern era, I would say, in the last 10 years. Like, I remember when Life came out, and then the whole thing was written by R. Kelly, or like executive produced by R. Kelly. I think he wrote like a big majority of the songs in there.
No. So Life has
with the Life.
It's got DJ
Maxwell
Quake, Destiny's Child, Maxwell, Sparkle, Talent, Kelly Price, Brian McKnight, Maya, City High, Khadijah, the Isley Brothers, Casey and JoJo, and White
City High.
Khadijah.
That's who, because they did the song, the Life song, the song called Life. And City High.
That was the track.
And you know what? They had they had a 2-year run, and then it was like no more City High.
Shadow Realm.
They
went
to the Shadow Realm.
They were messing with the same girl, and they couldn't figure that shit out. Internal Strike.
Internal Strike. High School High. Real quick.
You're right.
They had pretty much 2 songs by Wu with Method Man and Capadonna, and then they had Semi-Automatic Rap Fanatic with Inspector Deck and You Got. They had Tribe Called Quest, The Braxton, Scarface, and Face Mob, Large Professor and Pete Rock, Quad City DJs, Artifacts, De La Soul, Jodeci, Changing Faces, Faith Evans, D'Angelo and Erykah Badu, KRS-One, Lil' Kim and Junior Mafia, Real Live, Spice One, E40 and The Click, The Braids, Sadat X and Grand Puba, The Roots. Hey, man, those 2 right there, Soul and this track, this soundtrack.
But
no, go ahead. I'm done.
Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, even some of the not so good movies had like great soundtracks. Like, I'm looking at,
let me check it.
Movie called 1997. They had SWV and Missy Elliott, Can We, Joe, R. Kelly, Johnny Gill, and Coco. One Accord, Silk, Gerald Levert, Squirrel, Backstreet Boys, Too Short and Lil' Kim, Be Legit and E40, D Shot, E40, and look.
Yeah, Levetti.
Is that Levetti?
Levetti from That's Bay, yeah. I was going to say the other one.
KRS-One, LA Gans, Whitey Don, and Crooked.
Yep.
A 16-track soundtrack released February 25th, 1995.
Yep. I was gonna say the same thing with Sprung. Like that movie was like a kind of like an indie whatever, but then the soundtrack had Quincy Jones, Tisha Campbell had their own track on there. Jay-Z's Who You With, that was on there. Keystone, Cannabis and Lost Boys. Was it John Farte, Aaliyah, One in a Million remix, Mr. Dalvin, E40, Money Boss Players. Dude, what?
You know what?
Then you had Will Smith movies where he did all
Long.
Yeah. I actually just rewatched Men in Black 2 for Rosario Dawson only.
yeah.
But yeah, we could go through all this all the time. This is a B-sides kind of blurred lines thing, just going off on tangents,
We
stuff
call
like
this
that.
episode the episode about nothing. This is our Seinfeld episode.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, we be back. We got a bunch of stuff that we've been watching, and also Guardians of the Galaxy and a couple other things. So yeah, man, we'll talk to you guys later, and peace.